Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I am Doug Cannon.
In this week's show, we break down the Stanley Cup, try to find Tyler Seguin, and openly wonder if the Philadelphia Flyers have any sort of plan for the future.
We're also going to look at what seems to be a final coaching scenario around the NHL, along with Toronto shoring up their goaltending and the Blackhawks taking a 3-2 lead in the Stanley Cup Final.
All that and more. Let's drop the puck on episode 11. All right, Doug, here we are. The Stanley Cup will wrap up this week. Kind of makes me sad because no matter what happens, no matter who wins in the next couple days, we're not going to have NHL hockey to talk about next week. That's not really true. We're going to find plenty to talk about.
There'll be plenty to talk about, but
we're not going to have to watch next week.
There's no live action to watch. It's all going to be reruns and classic games and for me, some youth hockey.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, we'll keep busy. We'll be playing hockey or coaching hockey. And actually, in an odd way, this is the time of year you talk the most hockey because there's all the free agency, and the draft is, of course, a week from now. So we'll get into all that. But let's get to the Stanley Cup. The Blackhawks, as we speak, lead the Bruins 3-2. I don't think there's any surprises so far at this point in the series. I think a lot of people thought coming in this would at least go 6, if not 7. I'm still holding out hope that we get to a Game 7.
Yeah, I think that it's Game 7. I mean, I watched, don't tell anybody, but I watched the NBA's Game 7.
I'm telling everybody.
And that's what it's about, man. When you're in a championship series like that, it should go down to Game 7. It shouldn't be 4 and out. It should go 7 games. And through 5 games, every game's decided by a goal or 2. And they're all tight.
And I mean, the only 2-goal games were Game 3, the Bruins won 2-0. Game 5, Chicago won 3-1. But
that's only a 1-goal game.
Yeah, it was an empty
netter.
It's
an empty netter.
The only reason I even bring that up as a 2-goal game is it's the first time the Bruins have lost a 2-goal game since their series with Toronto. And you're getting back into early May at that point. I mean, you look at the remarkable run the Bruins have been on, and that's why I think that it's going to be tough for Chicago to close Boston out in Boston. But the flip side to that is Boston hasn't been in this situation yet through the whole Stanley Cup. They haven't been down through these entire playoffs. They haven't been down in a series. And so you wonder how a team's going to respond until you see it. We think we know that Boston's going to respond in a big way, but you never know until you actually see it.
Yeah, but Toronto gave them a big scare.
Oh, yeah.
Boston had to tighten up the laces and say, whoa, no, you're not taking it from us.
That's true. That almost counts.
I mean, and I got a feeling that Coach Julian is going to give them a simple reminder that, look,
you didn't come all this way to lose.
Yeah, and you've been in this situation before where you need to win. So I don't think that I think mentally, I said before we started recording, I think this Game 6 coming up tomorrow is going to be based on who's mentally prepared.
And that's why I think this is such a good series and why I hope it goes to Game 7, because you have 2 teams that are going to be mentally prepared because they've both been here before and they've both won before.
Well, and don't forget, 2 key components of each team are hurt right now. We don't know the injury of Patrice Bergeron. We have upper body injury to Jonathan Toews, but we don't know exactly what it is. But those are key cogs to both those teams.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost make the case that in these playoffs, I'm not going to sit here and discount Jonathan Toews, but Bergeron has been absolutely huge to the Bruins, whereas Chicago, maybe we get spoiled by what Toews does over the course of the full season and typically in the playoffs, but they haven't had to lean on him for offense as much as Boston kind of has with Bergeron. We know how Toews got hurt. We don't even really know what caused Bergeron to leave the game.
Well, in watching the game, Bergeron got hit, but I don't know what that hit did. It wasn't a big hit. It wasn't an explosive hit. He just got hit. And in watching how he tried to rim the puck around the boards, it almost looked like a back thing to me.
Yeah.
And then he went to the corner to play the puck a second time, and it looked like there was something in his lower back that was tweaking.
Well, and I mean, you hear ribs, you hear back, you hear spleen, which I'm not even sure I know where the spleen is. I know you don't want to.
No, it's inside somewhere.
As long as there's not a concussion for Toews, I'm fairly certain we're going to see him playing in Game 6.
Yeah, I think he just got shook up.
Yeah. So again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what you do with the spleen, but if it's anything else, I think we're going to see Bergeron try and get out there too, because this is the entire season, the entire NHL season for everybody on the line. But I think we're more likely to see Toews.
Yeah, I don't know, because Bergeron tried a third time to come out and skate, and he basically made it from the bench to the faceoff dot and went right back.
And it's not as big of a deal as Tuukka Rask or maybe Zdeno Chara, but not having Bergeron's a pretty big deal for the Bruins.
But he did go to the hospital, and he was released from the hospital, so the x-rays had to say something. I mean, a spleen's an internal injury, so you're not going to get released from the hospital if you've got internal injuries.
Yeah,
Am I speculating way too much? I mean,
well, we're both trying to be the doctor here, and neither one of us has any sort of degree in that area, but that's what are we supposed to do?
But, I mean, I'm not going to send a guy home if he's got a ruptured spleen.
Especially because Claude Julien's probably waiting in his driveway saying, hey, we got Game 6 tomorrow.
Yeah. Julian's quote was the best. He goes, we haven't heard anything. He's fine.
That's
Until I hear otherwise, he's fine.
That's definitely the mentality this time of year. Well, I'll tell you one guy that the Bruins could use. Tyler Seguin has done very little in these playoffs, and you look at this series, it's been very strange. The first couple games, 4-3 triple overtime, 2-1 Boston in overtime. I think that's what you would expect. The Bruins obviously want to play a lower scoring game. They win 2-0 Game 3. Even Game 5, they end up losing 3-1, but I think that's more their sort of game.
Mm-hmm.
But if Bergeron's not going to be able to play, and we don't know that, but even if he is going to be able to play, he's obviously hurt, they have to get production from somebody that's not just David Krejci. And you consider what Tyler Seguin has meant to this team all season, and really last season as well. He has 1 goal. That's not going to work.
No, I mean, you've got to spread the scoring. It has to be spread out, and you're going to see what happens when you rely on one guy to be all your offense.
That's not how Boston plays.
It's not how Boston plays, but I don't know.
Well, just to be clear, it's not Seguin has 1 goal in the Stanley Cup. He has 1 goal in the playoffs.
Right.
Jay Beagle has 1 goal in the playoffs. He's on Washington. They were out in round 1. And he doesn't even score for Washington. He has a goal. So Boston's going to need to get some sort of production from somebody else. They're going to need to score a couple goals. Corey Crawford's looked good. That defense looks good. Chicago obviously knows how to play.
And then if Bergeron doesn't come back, who takes his spot? They had the rookie in last night to fill,
Yeah. I mean, this is why Claude Julien gets paid the big bucks. I mean, he's so... The thing about Boston is that you don't just look at it and say, okay, this guy is out and he is a first liner, he's a second liner, they have 1 guy to move in. They move everything around. And that's why they've had so much success. So, the Bruins are clearly resilient. It's risky when you let a team like Chicago get this close. I know it's in Boston tomorrow. I know that the Bruins are a team that's more than capable of winning 2 in a row. In my opinion, they are still better than Chicago. It's close. But you let the Blackhawks get this close, and now they know they just have to win the next 60 minutes and they win the Cup. That's dangerous.
Yeah, well, you have the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, series went 1-0, it went 1-1, it went 2-1, it went 2-2. Now it's 3-2. I see it going 3-3, and everything will be decided on Wednesday.
So who wins the Conn Smythe? Because it's pretty wide open this year.
Yeah, it is. I still like Rask.
Yeah, I think if Boston wins, it's clearly Rask.
Yeah.
But Krejci's, I think he has 25 points now in the playoffs, that leads everybody. Patrick Kane has a couple really big goals in this series.
He had a couple of shots last night. He just couldn't bury them. Chara, he thought that instead of shooting the puck with the cannon he's going to toe drag and try to be fancy. And I'm like, big boy, shoot the puck.
It's not why you're out there.
It's not why you're out there. That's why you have Bergeron and the like. They do the toe dragging. You just rifle that cannon and away you go.
Well, and that comes back to your point that you were making off the air, and I don't know how much you want to go into it right now, but there was potentially a missed call with about 20 seconds left in Game 5, and it's not to say Boston definitely would have won the game, but we've seen what this team can do with 20 seconds near the end of a game where they need goals.
I just thought that I got upset. I mean, I actually left my couch when there was no call.
That means you're really upset.
And I mean, it's like my 15-year-old turned to me and he said, look, Dad, he's letting them play, referring to the officials. And I said, I understand that, but when it's a blatant call, you have to call it. 20 seconds left in the game, tripped.
This is Torrey Krug.
Krug, yep. Puck is turned over, empty net goal, game over. You make the call, face-off is inside, 6-on-4. You have a chance to tie it. I'm not saying you're going to, but you have a chance. So what I'm saying is the opportunity to tie the game was taken away from the Bruins.
And the reason Chara triggered this line of thinking in me is we saw what they did against Toronto. You just throw Chara in front of the net. And look, the Bruins, they were still playing 6-on-5 hockey near the end of that game last night and couldn't even get in the zone. But to your point, if the faceoff's in the zone, all of a sudden Boston just has to win it back. Whoever wants to play defense, you let Chara slide in front of the net, and you're going to get a chance to at least score.
And it's 6-on-4.
Yeah, so you're going to get a really nice chance.
You're going to get a really nice chance. You got 19 seconds to set it up. 19 seconds is a long time. Doesn't seem like it, but it's a long time.
Well, Boston's already shown that they can make a lot of noise in the span of 19 seconds.
It's hindsight. I know they put the whistle away a lot more in the playoffs. I saw a lot of calls that weren't called last night, but when it's that blatant, I mean, it was in the feet, boom, down.
Well, look, I'm one of those people that agrees with put the whistle away and let them play, except now we've gotten to the point where if Chicago just flipped the puck into the stands, it's an automatic 2-minute penalty.
Right.
And so once you've crossed that line and you have automatic 2-minute penalties where there's 2-minute penalties where there's no discretion at all, then yes, a blatant trip has to be 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So take nothing away from Chicago. I mean, they were down 2-1 in the series and they found a way to score on Boston. You go back to the last series, Pittsburgh never had that game where they broke out and scored. You felt like they could, they never did. Chicago hadn't had it either until they put 6 past Tuukka Rask, which is pretty unreal if you think about it.
Well, to Chicago's credit here, just to wrap things up real quick, after the 2-0 loss in Game 3, everybody, it's done, blah, 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 it's the Pittsburgh series over again, blah, blah, blah. And to Chicago's credit, they fought and clawed, and they won that game. That game, not only do you get the W, but it gives you home ice back.
And I don't think you're getting in Boston's head, but you're gaining confidence. Anytime you score 6 goals, you now believe you're going to score.
So now you got confidence. You win Game 5. The only thing that Boston's got going for them is they're going back to Beantown.
Yeah, they have defense, Rask, and home ice.
Yep.
And they have to lean on those 3 things. Claude Julien's a great coach as well, but that's what you have. And for Boston now, the whole season's on the line. You like having those 3 things to lean on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's do or die now for the Bruins.
You're listening to The Hockey Podcast. Feel free to email comments or questions to the show at our email address, thehockeypodcast@gmail.com.
Well, Doug, we got a little bit of clarity around the NHL as far as the coaching situation. I guess we still have one spot that's technically still open as we record this, but it might be the worst kept secret in hockey as far as who's probably going to be coaching Vancouver. And honestly, by the time this even airs, we may already know. But let's start. We didn't do a show last week. Let's start with Alain Vigneault, who's now the coach of the New York Rangers. I know a couple Rangers fans, and one of them remarked to me how weird it was to see the Rangers coach sit down for an interview when he got introduced, and he was smiling. I mean, how are they going to react to that?
Well, I think he's just an easygoing guy, and he's a good guy, and he's a proficient coach. I mean, his record speaks for itself. I mean, he hasn't found a lot of success in the playoffs. But he's in the playoffs. I think in the 7 years he was with Vancouver, he missed the playoffs once.
Yeah, he won the Jack Adams in there. I mean, he guided Vancouver to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup.
It was
now
10,
3
right?
seasons ago. Yeah. So we'll go through these. I mean, there was a couple different coaching moves and one coach re-signing with his previous team, but obviously every team has different standards they're looking for. The Rangers showed this year that just getting past the first round of the playoffs isn't enough. So I don't know what you think about Vigneault as far as being a good fit for New York, but I think that we've kind of talked about this in the past. Their situation's kind of weird. Tortorella may have just burned everybody out, and they may have had to get rid of him for that. And so Vigneault is a guy that has won in the playoffs before. He hasn't won the whole thing, but he's more than capable of winning it with that team.
Yeah, I mean, Tortorella, he had won it in Tampa, but he didn't have that success when he got to the Big Apple. And I think that Vigneault will do very, very well with that roster. I really do. I think that you and I have discussed this many times. I think that Torts' abrasiveness was wearing thin, and it wasn't getting through, and it wasn't spurring the motivation that it used to spur.
Yeah, it's the shelf life for that coaching style. You can only yell at guys for so long. At the beginning, it works, ideally, but then by the end, if it's not working, it just goes downhill so quickly. So, look, if Alain Vigneault comes in next year and the Rangers finish second in their division or whatever, and they win a playoff series and then go out in round 2, I don't think people in New York are going to look at him as a failure in his first year, even though that's pretty much identical to what John Tortorella did, because I think people are going to see Vigneault as the start of something new, and if they get to the second round next year, that's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, but I mean that roster. I mean, you've got great goaltending. You have Del Zotto. You have Richards. You have
Maybe.
Nash. Yeah, maybe. Trying to think of off the top of my head stands out. You got Mark Stahl.
Well, you had Marian Gaborik, and for whatever reason, now you don't have him anymore because of however that situation devolved.
Well, you got Hammerlick. You got Girardi. You got some good players on this team.
You got Chris Kreider, who's supposed to be good at some point. I mean, he's shown flashes of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good team. There's no denying that. I mean, people were picking him to win the Stanley Cup coming into this season.
And the team, the way it stands right now, has got a really nice balance of older and younger players. So the median age, just looking at it, is probably around 25, 26. That's nice.
Yeah, it's a nice setup. Most of their main guys are signed, at least through next year.
Mm-hmm.
So you've already got those guys on defense. You've got Dan Girardi back there as well. Your defense is locked in for the upcoming season. Your forwards are locked in for the upcoming season, assuming they don't buy out Brad Richards. And both goalies are locked in. But if you look at their team for 2014-15, they've got 4 guys signed. So
right.
This upcoming season's a big one. It's not like Alain Vigneault gets too much of a buffer zone to come in and transition. He's got to win.
Well, he's going to come in and he's going to win, and you're going to see how the players adapt to his system and to his style of coaching, and that will in turn help the front office in maybe some signings. Because you might have guys that were ready to bolt that might say, wait a minute, I'm liking what's going on here. I'd like to stay.
So the other thing is he's going to come in, he's going to have 82 games to work with. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like he's stepping in with 48 games. The flip side to that, though, is all these coaching changes are coming off a 48-game season.
Mm-hmm.
Should there have been this many coaching changes? I know it's different in each case. I know Tortorella, like we've said, is a little bit different. Lindy Ruff was in Buffalo forever, and they didn't seem to be going anywhere. So maybe, Alain Vigneault, if I'm Vancouver, I probably didn't let him go. And that's why I think this is a good pickup for New York. I understand why they did, but I'd be focusing on getting something for one of my goalies instead of firing my coach.
Yeah, I mean, the Vancouver situation is a funny situation, so I agree. I probably would have worked on the roster more so than the coaching. Only because, like I said, he's been in the playoffs every single year. So from a ticket standpoint, ticket sales, he's generating that.
You know what you're getting.
You know what you're going to get. You know that your team's going to make the playoffs. And typically they go pretty deep. They go at least 2 rounds, which is, that's great. TV revenue, ticket revenue, merchandise revenue. That's what clubs want. They want to get to the playoffs because they can make extra money. He gives you that.
And with him, there was always a chance that you would win the Stanley Cup.
Right.
Last 2 years, though, they did go out in the first round combined to win 1 game. So I understand that. So now the guy who might be coming in to take over, maybe, is John Tortorella. So it's like a coaching trade here.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like the league is better when John Tortorella is coaching.
Well, and I'll be honest with you. With Torts going there, that team needs somebody to wake them up.
They do.
And if anybody can wake them up, it's going to be John Tortorella.
Oh.
So I see a good fit there. I really do. I can see him walking in that room and say, okay, playtime's over, boys. It's time to go to work.
He's going to be the guy that finally breaks up the Sedin twins.
Yeah.
If ever there was going to be a guy to do it, it's John Tortorella.
How great would that be?
It would be hilarious. He would separate them. If one of them's not performing, he'll put him on the 4th line. He'll try and trade him.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't care. He just wants to win.
And he'll do what it takes to win.
So he doesn't have the job yet, but
No.
it sounds like
It looks like a good fit.
And
Lindy Ruff going to Dallas, to me, Lindy's a good coach. He's a solid coach. He was loyal to Buffalo. Buffalo was loyal to him. I just don't see it working in Dallas. And I have no stats. I have no factual. It just doesn't feel like a good fit for Dallas.
Well, it's probably because he was on the Buffalo bench when Dallas scored that controversial goal to beat them in the Stanley Cup. So maybe he's there as like a sleeper cell to slowly take them down. I don't know. I'm looking at things from the Western Conference perspective just because of where we are, where we record the show from. I hear what you're saying as far as how many times do you have to recycle the same coaches instead of bringing guys up. And we talked about this in the past. Dallas has a guy in the AHL who seems like he's ready to come up,
right,
and he's not going to get an NHL job this year. At the same time, though, just immediate future, it seems like the teams in the West are getting better coaches.
Caveat to that, though, and we haven't seen it yet, is that he might become an associate or an assistant coach. You never know.
That's true.
He could be pulled up, and they'll find somebody else to run the Texas Stars. But
he could be next in line whenever Ruff wants to be done, because Lindy Ruff's getting up there in age.
It'll be fun to see how Lindy. I haven't seen it yet, but how he assembles his coaching staff.
Yeah.
And staying in the Western Conference, Phoenix fans had some good news on Friday. Their coach got signed to a multi-year deal.
Yeah, that's about the best news the Coyotes could get other than ownership.
Yeah, I mean, with everything else that's going on surrounding the club, I mean, that's great news. I mean, Dave Tippett, in my opinion, is one of the, if not the best coach in the NHL today.
I made the point when it happened that there's not, and this isn't to disrespect some of the other top coaches around the league, but if I was starting a hockey team from scratch, Dave Tippett's my coach, and I'm not even really thinking about it too long.
Yeah, Dave Tippett's proven that he can work with a group of hockey players and make them succeed.
No matter who
and
they are.
Notice I didn't say superstars, just a group of hockey players. I mean, he came in and with the Coyotes, the roster was really, really young. He brought in more veterans, and he gave them success. And, it's all buying into a system and having the players buy into your system and work within the system and execute the system. And Tippett has that knack. He can get players to do it. He did it in Dallas. He did it in the minors.
He's done it everywhere,
He's done it everywhere he's gone. He's had success.
Whatever you give him, he's going to mold into something.
Mm-hmm.
He works very well with Don Maloney there, so that's a great tandem. You want to have a tandem like that in your front office and your coaching staff. I mean, you got to have players too, but with that foundation, you're going to be in it no matter who your players are.
Right, and I think that in all fairness, once Don Maloney and Dave Tippett and Brad Treliving, those three guys get an ownership in place, and they get a little bit more wiggle room to bring in different players, and especially around free agency, they can build themselves a really, really nice franchise. Just, I think those three men and the way they work together, they're the guys that can do it.
Yeah, they're all on the same page. You see around the league, you see some really good coaches that aren't on the same page with their GM, and it doesn't work. I don't know. There's some great coaches in this league. Claude Julien, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Quenneville, Dan Biles. I mean, there's a lot of very good coaches, but they're also all coaching a lot of superstars.
Very talented rosters, yes.
So we don't know what they could do. Not like the Coyotes have a bad roster, but we don't know what those guys could do building from scratch, whereas we already know what Tippett can do. And it's been very successful.
So, yeah, I think Coyotes fans are pretty happy this weekend.
You're tuned into the Hockey Podcast. Follow us on Twitter @HockeyPodcast for even more hockey news.
#DoIt.
First real big trade of the offseason coming down this weekend. Jonathan Bernier, who's kind of been buried behind Jonathan Quick in Los Angeles for his entire career, is on his way to Toronto for Ben Scrivens, Matt Fratton, and a second-round pick that's not even in this year's draft, which by all accounts is one of the deepest drafts in the last 10 to 15 years. So at least a second-round pick this year would be worth a little bit more than 2014 or 15. You follow the Maple Leafs closer than I do. I mean, both follow the NHL very closely, but what are your thoughts on this? Getting, by all accounts, a pretty good goaltender. We've seen Jonathan Bernier in person quite a few times.
I think Bernier is a hell of a I think he's a great goalie.
You just half-censor yourself?
I half-censored myself.
But
Not that I really need to. It's a podcast, for Pete's sake. But anyways.
You didn't cut the word out, though. You just drew more emphasis to it.
I like Bernier. I've always liked him. And when I saw it, I was happy because I'm a Toronto fan. I mean, I think it's a great fit for Toronto. Toronto really didn't give up anything.
They didn't. And, when I sat down and I talked to you about it this morning, you're like, well, they didn't give anything up. And I was like, well, they gave up something. But I looked at it. They really didn't give anything up.
Backup goalie.
That you don't need now because you have Bernier.
Right, because you got Reimer and Bernier now.
So you don't need Ben Scrivens. He was solid sometimes this year, but you don't need him. So just throw him out.
Your 1-2 tandem right now is awesome because Bernier's probably going to be their number one guy, but it's going to have Reimer going, wait a minute, I was the number one guy. I want to stay number one. So it competes competition. And I think it's a great fit. I just love the fact that they didn't have to give up anything.
It's just funny to me that Toronto fans have constantly been talking about, we need a goalie and we have to bring somebody in. And Reimer now he was pretty solid this year. When he hasn't been hurt, he's been good. He hasn't been win you the Stanley Cup by himself good, and maybe Bernier does have that upside because in limited playing time with LA, he's been very good. So You give up Matt Fratton, you give up a second-round pick, essentially. Fratton, he's an up-and-comer. And L.A., from their perspective, they don't need Bernier, so they got somebody. It's a trade that helps both teams.
Well, let's look at it this way. You gave up Matt Fratton, Ben Scrivens, and a pick for 214, 215, whichever one they choose to give up. The big rumor for how many months was Luongo was going to Toronto. What do you think they'd have to give up to get him?
No, so much more. I'm surprised they only had to give this much up because the rumors were that Minnesota and Philadelphia were chasing Bernier too, and it was just kind of a matter of who is going to offer the Kings the most. If I'm Philadelphia, I'm offering a lot more than this for Jonathan Bernier.
Right. I mean, you're still sitting there with a $10 million a year contract with Brizgalov. I mean, come on.
And not the most stable backup goalie in Steve Mason right now.
Right. And I'm looking at this. I'm not saying that Bernier's better than Luongo. I'm saying he is a solid netminder, and he's going to win games for Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
And they got a good 1-2 tandem between them and Reimer.
There was a couple years ago when a lot of teams were looking for goalies, there was kind of the thought of if you can get one of these young goalies and pry them away from their team, they were essentially backups. It was Tuukka Rask, it was Corey Schneider, and it was Jonathan Bernier. Obviously, Rask has been insanely good.
Right.
And Corey Schneider seems like he will be good once they sort that situation out. Bernier was the third. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as those guys, but he was mentioned with those three when they were all backups. And Toronto just went out and got him, like I said, essentially for very little.
And, there's the other one is Elliott in St. Louis. I mean, look at the season that Halleck and Elliott had two seasons ago. Yeah, I mean, Bernier's a great pickup. Maple Leafs fans should be very happy this Sunday afternoon.
And if you're Philadelphia, what are you doing? Because if you had gotten Bernier, you could buy Brizgalov out. You'd be under the salary cap finally, which is going to be an issue for them.
Yeah, they're over the cap right now, right?
There's all this speculation of comments came out this week from Brizgalov's agent that he was told that they're not going to buy him out. And it's funny because you can tell it's all posturing. He's like, well, I trust Paul Holmgren at his word, and so I've gotten an indication they're not going to let him go, so I'm just going to assume he's being honest. Like, just all this little pressure, like, if you let him go, you're not honest. Philadelphia's got to do what's best for them, but in my mind, what's best for them is going out and get Jonathan Bernier. Look, even if you had to give up Sean Couturier, let's just say you gave him up if you're Philadelphia. Yeah, that hurts. He's a good young player, but now you have Bernier. You let Brizgalov go. You have. I'm just used to hearing Brizgalov and goal back to back, so that's why I said that. And then you get some money and some flexibility. I think it's a missed opportunity for Philadelphia.
It's a great opportunity for Toronto, and I'm very happy as a Maple Leaf fan that they cashed in on it.
I would imagine so. So let's transition to the draft. I think we'll probably do a lot more on the draft next week because those will be the hours leading into the draft. But the Colorado Avalanche have the number one pick. They come out this week twice and say that they are not taking Seth Jones with that number one pick. By all accounts, the top prospect in this draft. You can make a case Nathan McKinnon is as well, I guess, depending on what scouting service you're using. But Seth Jones certainly seems like the safest pick, a big, rugged defenseman. There just aren't many of them available.
Okay, so you go to NHL.com's draft page.
Okay.
And the first image you'll see is Patrick Waugh sitting at a table and the headline Forward Thinking. And Sackett says Avalanche will pass on Jones if they keep the top pick.
Okay, here's what I'll get about this. Even if you were going to do that, why would you say it?
I don't know. It's a good question.
If you're going to pass on him and you look at the teams drafting right behind you, you've got Florida and Tampa Bay right there. They probably both want Seth Jones. If you're Florida, you're freaking out right now that he might drop to you at 2. Florida needs a lot of help, but you know what I'm saying. If you're Colorado and you would rather have McKinnon, which I'm guessing is taking them at their word, I'm guessing that's their plan, why would you try and trade down to 2?
Sakic was quoted, and he said, Jones is a great player. He's going to be good. But after we had our internal meetings, we came up with these 3 forwards, McKinnon, Drouin, and Barkov.
Okay, well, Barkov's
We're really
fourth.
leaning toward one of those 3 forwards.
So then Colorado didn't need to win the lottery. the prize for winning the lottery was Seth Jones.
Well, I guess they feel that getting a forward is more important than a defenseman.
So is this posturing, though? Do they think there's a team behind them that really wants McKinnon, that thinks one of them's going to slide? Are they talking to Nashville and saying, look, if you want one of these forwards, we're going to take them, and then all three of them are going to go, and you're not going to get one? I don't know. It's weird to me, not that they think they need a forward more than a defenseman, even though I disagree with that looking at their roster. But if that's the way they feel, then whatever. What's weird to me is that they're public about it.
Well, the funny part is, too, is that NHL.com had a fan poll on their website. 41% of the fans selected Seth Jones as going first. 28% selected McKinnon second. 15% said Drouin. These are, I don't know the total number of fans that participated, and 14 for Barkov. And so that has been the order since the scouting reports came out.
It's been the order since December, it feels like. I mean, I remember watching the World Juniors knowing that Jones, McKinnon, Drouin were supposed to be the top three picks in that order.
And it hasn't changed.
How much of this is, if you're Colorado and you're kind of ushering in a new era, let's just say you take Seth Jones and McKinnon is great as an offensive player, you're never going to hear the end of it because the stats are going to pile up. You're going to say, look, we could have had that guy as a playmaker, goal scorer. Whereas if you take McKinnon and Seth Jones ends up being great, you're probably not going to hear it quite as much down the line because he's just going to be a solid defenseman.
Yeah, defensemen usually fall under the radar, but I mean, the kid finished with 14 goals and 42 assists.
I would take him number one. I'm not even thinking twice about it.
And that was in 61 regular season games. That doesn't include the playoffs. And he was a plus 40.
Yeah. No, and playing against the best competition around, too.
Yeah, I mean, in looking at Colorado's roster, too, I don't think a defenseman would hurt them.
Look, unless I'm Boston or Phoenix, I'm sure there's one or two other teams out there that's loaded on defense. Unless I'm one of those two or three teams, I'm taking Seth Jones first. There's just not many defensemen like that.
Yeah, that's the best available position sitting there. And if you get a number one pick, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if they don't take him. I am a big fan of Drouin, though. I like the way that kid plays.
I do, too. I don't know if Colorado needs
I would actually take him before I took McKinnon.
Well, it's going to be fun. The draft is next week, and like I said, we'll get more into it next week. Maybe, I don't know what, look at the top maybe 10, 15 picks, guys that'll be available. But quickly, I feel like we should at least go back and very briefly look at a couple of the awards because, as I said, we didn't have the show last week. Get your thoughts real quick, Doug. Alex Ovechkin wins the Hart Trophy.
I'm fine with that.
I am, too.
You and I both picked him.
And we've said on the show, I'm a huge Penguins fan. I think Crosby is by far the better player. It's not even close. But for what Ovechkin did, and he played the whole season, as unfortunate as it was for Sidney Crosby, the Capitals don't even make the playoffs if it's not for Ovechkin and the ridiculous run he went on.
Which is what was our argument anyways, was the fact that there's just no way that it's anybody but. Vezina?
I love that a Columbus Blue Jacket won a major award. I just do. And he deserved it. I thought he earned it.
Yeah, that poor team gets bounced around a lot, and he deserved it.
We bounced to the East next year.
Yeah, they got bounced to the East next year. But he had a great season, and he deserved it. PK Subban from Norris, I'm happy with that pick. Rookie of the Year.
I went off on this a few shows back. It's nothing against Jonathan Huberdeau, who leads all rookies in points, so that's nice. He finishes the year with 14 goals, 17 assists for 31 points. Nail Yakupov had 17 goals, 14 assists, also for 31 points, had more goals, wasn't even a finalist. That's what I don't get.
Yeah, I don't get the Yakupov
better
thing.
Plus minus? I mean, I get that he's on a better team, but to not even be a finalist?
Yeah, we talked about that a few episodes back.
Just weird to me. Coach of the Year, Paul McLean. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that.
There's no way.
Every time he looked at his roster, another major player went down, and he still dragged him into the playoffs.
Yeah. You can't. The Selke Award, Best Defensive Forward, Jonathan Toews.
Well, at the end of the year, Jonathan Toews may not even be thinking about the awards he did or didn't win at the show where there wasn't a show this year, but I'm hoping next year he'll be back in Vegas where it always is.
Yeah, GM of the Year went to Ray Sherrill.
I know you and I disagree on this. I think he did everything he could to put the Penguins in position to win. They just stopped scoring goals.
I don't know.
I heard a great debate maybe it wasn't just those three guys, but when we got to the Final Four, who the best four GMs are in order. When you had the Kings, the Penguins, the Bruins, and the Blackhawks. Mm-hmm. And Ray Shero was certainly up there. Dean Lombardi was up there. I mean, you had some good GMs leading their teams deep in the playoffs this year. So, yeah, he's got to be happy with that award. I really thought the two that stood out the most were the Hart and the Calder.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still not sold. Sorry.
He's just always a skeptic.
Art Ross.
Well, we knew who was going to win the Art Ross.
Yeah,
How funny would it be if they didn't give it to him? If they're like, all right, the winner of the Art Ross this year, we had the fans and the players vote. I always love it when the players vote on the best player of the year, and it's somebody different than who wins the Hart Trophy, which, again, happened this year. Crosby wins that award, the Ted Lindsay, and Ovechkin wins the Hart. So next week, we'll wrap up the Stanley Cup. We'll look ahead to the draft. Lots on the way this summer. Lots of player movement's going to happen this summer with the cap coming down. It's going to be crazy.
Where's my man Danny Briere going to end up?
Maybe we'll have him on and we'll ask him. That is it for episode 11. Next week, we'll put a bow on the Stanley Cup Final and take a close look at the 2013 draft, one of the deepest in recent memory.
I'm curious. What type of bow?
Bow tie, black, pink polka dots.
Ooh. We'll also take a look at the free agency market, which all begins on July 5th.
For Doug Cannon, I am Luke Lipinski. Thanks for listening to the Hockey Podcast.